That's great. Well, finally, we're going to get to Andy Kinney, our featured modeler, and his great railroad. As you know, Andy specializes in operation, and I think this is really going to be interesting for you to hear him discuss the operational part of his model railroad. Andy, thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, you're welcome, Jim, but this isn't on operations. That's coming up in the fall.
Well, whatever.
It was all designed and built for operations though. So that's a good part. Okay, let me go to share screen. Okay, here. There we go. Okay, what I've done over time is I built my railroad, and I learned a lot of new things. I've changed some things. I corrected some things as I went, and I tried to record them on camera, images for later use as I built the railroad. And I've taken these different things that I've learned, and I've already presented some of them to the on program, some of the shorter versions. I took those out of this one because I had over 200 slides here, and although the slides would go through pretty quick, that's still, there was no reason to go over what I'd already done, and we have it on YouTube for people to see. So we'll just start here, and basically I'm just going to take you through what I've learned and what I continue to learn as I go here. So it is the Nashville Road. I think you all know that now. It's a railroad I'm building, triple deck, and we've gotten to the point where not a whole lot of scenery, but a lot of operation. So I have a great crew, and we operate. Well, before COVID, we operate regularly, twice a month. So the shot, this is very similar to the shot that Joe Fugate used for Model Railroad Hobbyist magazine cover. And layout, room preparation, and construction, not so heavy on construction, but it's really important, I believe. Now, this is all my thoughts and doesn't mean it's correct. I'm sure Clark has something better than me, but we'll wait and see what he says. Hope you took that the right way, Clark. A layout room, it's good to prepare it ahead of time and not after you've got your railroad going. We cover walls and backdrops, layout structure, ceiling, and lighting. This is a very early picture, and there's several things I can point out on this. This picture here was of an old camera, and luckily I found it because I don't have too many of the framework in that. For my multi-deck, I ran 2x2. I actually put drywall up over the studs, and I ran 2x2 vertical boards and lag bolted them. You can see here, I lag bolted them into the studs behind the drywall. And I hung everything off of those. So I both screwed and glued them. The upper deck, the depth wasn't so much that I had to worry about whether I had enough support. The lower one here was 2 feet, so I wanted support, and I brought these out several inches. You'll see on the next image, this was originally on the lower deck. The passing, or I should say, the main line was the back track. The second was a passing siding, and these 2 tracks here were for the gravel pit operation. And basically that was it. Going the other way behind the camera, it was when it came off the passing siding, there was nothing, just a single main all the way. I decided I wanted to do more with this area, so it went from a passing siding with some operation in the gravel pit to a fairly major yard with several trains operating out of it daily. And you've seen pictures of that. the 3 Jeeps were leaving that, and I've got a few more pics. But one of the things I wanted to point out was this support. Let's see right here, the support on this one coming down, the support here, they were out several inches, and I decided to make this deeper. And when I did, I took all these supports, cut them out and moved them back, and then added another several inches, exactly how many, I can't remember, but I added quite a bit of board behind it to give me more depth for the yard and that. Let's see, Christmas tree lights don't work. Forget about those. I don't know how many lights I bought and scrapped. I think that's probably it for this. I'll go to the next picture here. And up here you can see the boards that, the vertical boards that were for the backdrop that I cut out and I repositioned way back here. So that made quite a bit of difference in the depth here. That's basically what I wanted to show you there. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, dealing with the problem. When you have multi-decks, one thing you have to worry about is structures and scenes on a lower deck impinging on a upper deck or a deck above it. And this was not going to work out. I wanted this station here. It was given to me by a group of modelers in Indianapolis. And this station actually sat in the Indianapolis station down in the front in this area on their model railroad club. And when they were kicked out by a hotel that took it over, they had nowhere to put this. The gentleman that built it had passed away, and they brought it up from Indianapolis for me. They told me they had a perfect station for me. So I definitely wanted to keep the station. And what I did was I got rid of the upper deck here, and I inset the main line single track into the wall. I have a couple more shots here, but I cut into the 2x2s. They're bolted above and bolted below, and I just cut 2 or 3 inches out of them, and then set this board with the track. To make it look like the train wasn't just going off into the sky, I made these pieces of the fascia large and long, and the train would go into the tunnel, disappear, and it would come out down at this end. Now, in the long run, I'm going to have masonite backdrop covering this area. It's going to be hinged at the bottom, and it's going to have building flats on it. It's going to be the downtown area, and that'll continue all along this wall here. Another picture. Also, you'll see a little bit later, these are lift outs too, so I can get at these, get at the train if I have a problem with it. And again, going back in and then coming out on the far side. Okay, lighting and ceilings. I decided I wanted to put a ceiling up before I got started, and I didn't like the 2x4s, the paper type, pressed paper type 2x4 insulated boards. They start to sink in the middle. They lose their body, and I cut everything into 2x2s, and I framed it 2x2. My only problem with that is when I cut them in half, the fibers on the edge that I cut started being released, and that caused dust. So I had to seal all those. But I did put the ceiling all up before I got started on the railroad. And the lighting, I was very lucky. The local high school in DeWitt was being rebuilt, modernized. And a friend of mine that was a contractor working there told me to run over there and get some lights. They were throwing them in the dumpster. And it was a very big school. And I went over with my pickup, 8-foot bed, and I loaded that bed up, stacking them vertically in there. And I probably got 40 or so of these lights. They came with 4 bulbs, 2 ballasts, very old, but in very good condition. And so I was able to do my whole railroad room with these lights and still have quite a few left over. We have updated these lights, gone to T8 bulbs and with electronic ballasts. We're getting rid of the old ballast with the PCBs and stuff. I've got 5 lights left to update, rebuild, and we're going to have that done within the next 2 weeks, and they'll all be done. So that's an important thing. You have to make a decision on if you want to do anything with the ceiling, but I would really recommend getting good lighting and getting your lighting set up. I've used, or I should say, I bought some LED lighting, but not used it yet. Yeah, I think if I was just starting today, I'd probably be going with LED, but you know, with all these lights and the quality I'm getting out of them, I'm happy with these. Okay, so layout lighting. All right, it's important for a multi-deck layout to have good lighting for the lower decks. Now you can see down here, this is staging, and I put some lighting at both ends, but not in the middle. This is the lower deck, and it's well lit. I've got some areas well lit, and I've got other areas that have to be lit yet. And what I went with on this is, you can see picture here. These are about 2 feet. They're 23 inch, so just shy of 2 feet, and they come with jumpers. You can link up to 5 of them, and it's worked out really well. Bill Neal used some of these on his layout, and he gave me the idea for it. And I was buying them at Myers right along, and then they decided that they were going to LEDs. So this is what you'll get now. They're a little bit more expensive. They're somewhere in the area of, well, the other one were around $10 a piece. These might be up around 14, 15. I'm not sure. I bought a couple and I haven't used them yet. So, but the underdeck lighting, I mounted them on 1x2 boards and on the back side, and then just the whole length of the run each for each deck will have these types of lights. I also put an order in at 1000bulbs.com or 1000lights.com, whatever they are, and ordered a bunch of extra bulbs because these things were burning out a fair amount, I thought, for the amount of time I was using them. So the bulbs were really cheap, and I bought a box of them to have for replacement. So just a couple more shots here. Okay, layout construction techniques. Laying the Atlas Code 83, I did show this a little bit not too long ago, I believe. Cork road bed, installation ideas, and super elevation. So I use either a 4 or a 5 foot straight edge when I'm laying tracks, the straight track to keep it nice and straight. And I use calipers to keep the distance between the tracks, and a putty knife, and Alex Plus DAP is, or DAP Alex Plus caulk. You put that down paper thin and just lay the track on it, put a little weight on it and let it dry. Same with the cork. All the cork was installed with this caulk, and then a track over it. And it's worked out very well for me. It's held very, very well. Okay, this is just showing you I'd use a straight edge along the line to make sure that the track is straight. I would put this against the rail head on the outside, and I just butt the track up to it. And also it shows you the caliber used to keep the distance equal all along the way, and you can make adjustments. The caulk doesn't set up real quickly, so you have time to work with it. And here it looks after I've laid the caulk and then laid the track into it. It looks curved here a little bit, but that's just the camera. Use the straight edge to put it in. Okay, now for the areas between the track, between separate pieces of track where you got to use a rail joiner, I started taking the extra ties that you would get with this flex track, and I would put them under the end, and then you can put heat on it. Whoops, I'm sorry. You can put heat on the top of the rail with the soldering iron, and just let it heat up to the point that it goes down into the tie, just enough so you don't have a hump here because of the extra metal from the rail joiner. If you get it too hot though, you're going to have these ends curl up, so you got to be kind of careful with it. And this showing how I would transition from cork down to plywood. All my yards are right on plywood. I only use cork for the main line. And I think I told you in the past, I had a really good deal. I went to Home Depot, and they had a 125-foot roll of cork, which was originally $500, and they were selling it for 125, 25% of what was the original price. So I bought the whole thing, and I just set up a rig to unroll it and cut it in pieces, and was able to do the whole layout with that. That saved me quite a bit of money. Super elevation. This is weed whacker cord, or whatever you want to call it, the string. You can get different thicknesses. I think this is around 60 or so, if I'm not mistaken. And I would super glue it down, and then I would use the caulk to lay the track into it. And at both ends, I would just sand it down. Actually, you could use a belt sander. If you don't get it too hot, it will come unglued if you get it too hot. But just a belt sander will bring it down nicely over a foot. Just taper it down to nothing to go into the super elevated curve. And here's a picture of super elevation. Another couple. You can see the difference. These are just industrial tracks up here. So you can see the cant here of the super elevation. Okay, scratch built crossings. I started putting in Atlas plastic crossings, and they just weren't working for me. I get too many dead spots, and nothing worse than having to deal with engines quitting on you as you're trying to switch. So I took this, this was from Fast Tracks. I made a copy of it, and you can see it's the right size. So I ripped this out, and then I started working with this. Actually, let's see if no, that's right. I didn't want to spend too many slides showing you each piece going in. So that's how it looked like. What I did was I glued this down, these ties down on the plastic, and then I went ahead and built it up right on the ties, solder it. One thing I also learned when you're using a Dremel, it's really easy to cut into a rail you don't want to cut into. There's a couple of them there. So you got to be very careful with the Dremel that you don't cut more than you really want to. But that's the crossing I put in at the paper mill. These switches were all Fast Tracks rebuilds. I should say Atlas rebuilds to Fast Track specs. So the center portions of these switches are all like Fast Track, and they work so much better. Okay, passenger throat. This was originally a plastic, or standard Atlas crossing, same thing, having problems with engines dying on the switch. So first of all, I laid the plate, just plastic plate, and then I scribed center line for both tracks. Then I started gluing in. You can see I have them up here, and I take these and lay them into the glue and let them dry. And then after they're dried, then I just start soldering. Well, here it shows you all of them in there. And then I started soldering all the rail in, and then I would cut in piece as I needed to, all the parts of the crossing. And this was it when it was done. And then what I did was, let's see if it doesn't show, you can see the cuts. There's a cut there and a cut there. But what I was able to do was power this up with when the frog juicers, and there's no dead rail in here. And the engines run over it really nicely now. But the cars run through it really nice, and I'm quite happy the way it worked out. And these switches up here were number 12s. No, I'm sorry, number 8s. And I also rebuilt these to fast track standards. So got rid of the hinge switches, and they're just, they just flex the rails solid. So you can see it again here. Okay, scenery thoughts. Track ballasting, track weathering, strata rock formation, stone walls, ground covering. And the ground covering is only real dirt and ground goop. I didn't get into the other one that I used, the quilt batting, because I did that already. And a little bit on trees, just an idea. Okay, track ballasting. So variations of dirt and cinders in yards and industries. And I use Smith & Son Penn, Ohio gray ballast for the main line. And I really liked Smith & Son ballast. Harley Smith passed away a couple of years ago. I think his son's still doing it, but I don't know how easy it is to get ballast from them. Harley used to drive into Pennsylvania to some of the quarries and that. And around the area where the trucks were driving and that, there would be a lot of this stuff really ground up. He would fill a big barrel up in the back of his pickup, bring it home, and he would sift all through those. For my track ballasting, I used this Sureline. It's a touch-up pad, if you're not familiar with it. And it worked just great. You put the ballast down, whether it's dirt or regular ballast, and you can use that to kind of spread it. And then to get all the ballast off the ties and around the rail, the spike heads and that, you just barely touch the ties with this thing, and you just go back and forth, very short amount, ½ inch or so back and forth, and just kind of go along the rail that way. And when you get done, this is what it looks like. It'll get all that ballast off the rail. So it does a nice job, and it covers it fast. So this is what I do everything with. And again, I learned this from a gentleman in Indianapolis area, Ted. He's a school teacher. I can't think of his last name. Beautiful railroad, Union Pacific. And I asked him about that, and he gave me the information on this. So I ran with it. So initial track weathering, initial spray of Rust-Oleum camouflage earth brown. And that is one of the camouflage colors. It's basically the very same as roof brown from Floquil. Both companies were owned by RPM. And although Floquil's gone, I think they're still using some of the same colors. So, and then I use a variety of tans and gray acrylic colors to age some of the ties. And I give everything a wash of alcohol and India ink just to tone it down. So also, I've also used very watered down weathering wash. And basically I use acrylic paints, take some black, brown, and gray, put it in a jar of water, and just put as much paint in as you want. It's still going to be very watered down. Shake it up good, and then I use a say a 1-inch brush, and I just cover everything. I'd cover the ballast, I covered the ties, and before you know it, it's gone, and it doesn't change a whole lot, but it subdues the area a little bit. And I think that I like the look of it after you've done that. So these ties here have all been hand painted, and I gave it a wash of that alcohol India ink. Now, I've not weathered any of these or scenic any of this area because these switches are going to be rebuilt to the Atlas or the Fast Track standard. They're all Atlas switches. So until I do that, I'm not going to touch this area as far as ballasting and scenicking goes. So that's, and I've got several places like this on a railroad, so it'll be a while. Here's some of the ties. I just go along, I'd take 2 or 3 different colors, and I would just paint some ties, and then I'd go along, paint a couple more, and so on across the area. It goes pretty fast, and I find it kind of relaxing. I enjoy it. And of course, you want to do that before the scenery's down, the ballasting is down. You can see the black stuff is cinder, kind of a cinder mix I use. And I mix it with dirt, finely filtered dirt. Okay, real dirt base. I've got, luckily for me, I've got a lot of clay. Well, it's good and bad. I've got a lot of clay on my land. So when I was out working an area with the tractor, it really ground up this clay to a fine powder. And although I've not used too much of it yet, I've given, Bob Butler took some back. Bob's here with us. He took it back to Sandusky with him, and it makes it really easy to work with and to filter. So I was using these filters you see at the bottom, but here's a mixture that I take with the dirt and the black cinder that I have. It's a very fine black. But this filter, the sieve, I should say, I bought 4 of them. I actually have to pick up one more. But I will have for sizes up above, you can see 20, 40, 50, 60, and 110. So they're a nice size. They're probably 6 inches, 5 to 6 inches across, and 3 or so inches tall, maybe 4. So you can put a fair amount of material in there and filter it out. So that really helps getting the big stuff out, so it doesn't mess the scene up. The large chunks in that are not going to be there. So you can see some of the dirt down below. That's some of the filtered stuff, and then some of it's mixed into the cinder. I've noticed on some of my pictures the little white spots show up for some reason a lot more, salt and peppery, but in person, when you look, you don't get that. Something in the camera is causing that to happen, but it's actually a lot nicer and more subdued looking in person.
Hey, Andy, 2 quick questions.
Sure.
Jim Murphy and the Zoom chat wants to know, where do you get the sieves?
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have that. Well, that is at Amazon. And let's see, I don't know if you want me to take the time to look at it. The Amazon has a lot of stuff in there, and I got that from Joe Fugit. Joe was the guy that put me onto that.
That's okay. You can just put that in the chat later on.
Okay, that sounds good.
Don't
Yeah,
take time now.
yeah. I was going to do that, and I got busy, and I forgot to add that to it. But you can buy a whole set of them for somewhere around $45 with free shipping, which isn't too bad.
The second question I have is from me. You're talking about Atlas Track that's converted to Fast Track standard. Exactly what does that mean?
Okay, are you familiar with Fast Tracks?
Yes.
Okay, what I did was, I took, take the switch that I'm looking at right here. And if this was an Atlas switch, what I did was I pulled it apart. I got rid of the closure rails and the point rails and the frog, this frog back here and these two rails here. So I ripped those out. And I had to use a certain amount of the copper clad ties, the ones I showed you when I was doing the crossings. And the copper clad ties are what holds it together. I'd solder the rail pieces in place. And I'd make the frog on, I've got a number 6 jig for making number 6 Fast Track switches. But you can also make it without that. It just makes it a lot faster and a lot easier if you've got that jig. And I would just drop that new section into the the center portion of an Atlas switch. You can't do it like on the layout. You got to pull it apart. But it takes a little over an hour to do it. But you figure you can rebuild an Atlas switch to fast track quality for about $2.50 a switch. So that's not bad. That's pretty cheap. Does that answer?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. All right.
May I
And so,
interrupt for a second? That works really good for Shinohara switches too. I had a lot of trouble with Shinoharas and rebuilt mine a very similar way.
oh, good. I didn't know that. That's good to know. Thank you. So this here's a mixture of the cinders and the dirt. And you can see this other dirt's pretty fine. I filtered that. Now this was before I got those nice sieves from Amazon. I filtered in a little tea strainer, but it worked out pretty good. And here again, all that white shows up there. It's just not there when you're looking at the tracks. It blends very nicely, but this is a combination of dirt and that black cinder. It's a lot darker in person. And then I've got some dirt in between with a little grass, a little greenery, or should say weeds in that. Okay, sedimentary rock. What I use is a friend of mine, again, found this and showed it to us at our division meeting, and I ran with it. I thought it was really great. Quickcrete's the company that makes it. It's expansion joint strips. Now they're 5 foot long, 1/2 inch thick, and 4 inches wide. And this is board here. So it's impregnated with some kind of an oil preservative. It's a bunch of paper fiber or wood fiber, I should say. And basically what you're doing is you're snapping it. You're breaking it. You don't want to put any cuts in there or anything because then it doesn't look natural. And I was doing it in the door jamb, and it was really working well till I realized I was popping the screws right out of the door jamb. So I had to be careful. But if you have a vise, a good sized vise, you can use that also. And what you do, this is a finished side. So when you snap it in half, you go back and forth a little bit, back and forth until they break. And then you're going to have 2 pieces with that finished, with that ragged face that you want. Then come up here and you just cut this. I was actually using my saber saw and just cutting it and then doing the snap again, then cutting it. So you end up having a bunch of pieces like this. The back side's flat from the cut, and the front side is what what's going to be the sedimentary rock. You can see some back here. So this is what it looks like as you're cutting it, snapping it, cutting it, snapping it. And then you stack it up. I think this looks slightly blurry. You can see there's a lot of fiber in here, but the fiber we take care of, you'll see. So here again, now this has all been glued together, and I just use, you know, what a carpenter's glue, glue it together, let it set. And then I believe what I did was curved. Yeah, I cut it, the curvature that I wanted for the scene. Then I take Mod Podge. You want the flat finish Mod Podge, and you just coat it. This is 2 separate pieces, that one up there and then this down here. And you just coat it really heavy with the Mod Podge and let it dry. And when it dries, it becomes very hard. And then what I do is I take a wire brush, a good sturdy wire brush, not one of those old cheap ones, and I just brush the heck out of it. And you can't hurt this stuff, but it'll take all the fiber out. And then you go ahead and paint it the way you want it. You'll see a little bit later. I actually had it like this and showed it to someone. They said, well, you should have layers of different colors because of the different types of rocks and the sedimentary rock, so or materials, I should say. So I went ahead and colored it. Now, one thing I can point out to you, and it doesn't show up very much when you're just looking at the scene, especially if you're not looking straight on, you can see where these are. And you can, if you want to take the time, you know, fill them in a little bit, but in person, they never really show up. You're not staring at them. Okay, here's another piece. This is the piece over the tunnel that lifts out, and I wanted to put a little in there. So same thing, I made it, there's your wire brush. So I made it right in the piece overhead, and then wire brushed it and then painted it. And again, you know, paint it whatever color you want. And here I modified it a little bit, and then I used some ground goop to cover it. Okay, you can see these little holes here. Those drove me crazy at first. I didn't want those, but when I decided I was going to do something about it, I wasn't so happy with the way it ended up. So I think this looks okay. And what I used was this spackling, lightweight spackling, and I used a toothbrush, and I filled in all the slots or the holes in that with the toothbrush. And then when it dried, it just didn't look that good. And see if I got one. Nope, I don't have one more picture. So that might have been it right there. No, the holes are still there. Anyways, I decided it wasn't worth it. But if you don't like the holes, you can fill them in and then just go ahead and paint it the way you want it painted. So processing material, break off the end pieces, you know, cut, break, back and forth, and then stack them for the effect you want. Use liquid nails to glue them together, or yellow, the carpenter's glue. You coat the face with Mod Podge. When dry, you wire brush the fibers off. And optional, if you want more of the gaps filled, use a toothbrush to work lightweight spackle in the crevices. Paint horizontal bands as desired. And that's what it looks like. So here's one more that I did. Again, I'll just take you through it. This is at the other side. The colors here I don't quite like. I was playing around with them. I'm going to change some of the colors on this. Okay, now the second thing that I came up with was cement board. It's that sub floorboard they use for when they're putting in bathroom tile and all that kind of stuff. And you can, this snaps easy. You can score it. Say score maybe 4 inches or so, snap it, and then you start snapping it the other way, and you come up with a bunch of these. And actually that handle right there would hold them and snap them. It shows you right here. So it snaps easily. And then it's just a different type of material. It's thinner, so you can get a little bit. If you use the other with this and some of the ceiling tile, so you get all kinds of different, it looks like a different type of material also. It's not all the same. So this stuff back here, layers of this and this with this, and just kind of mix them up. That can look very real. You can also get this wet and arc it. Because if you look at images of sedimentary rock, you'll see some really curved stuff that over the years, as that stuff built up in that, it just became curved as it settled. Okay, stone walls. These are a bunch of Woodland Scenics castings. And basically, I just glued a whole bunch of them in there, and then I put the riprap at the bottom. Then I realized this isn't even, you wouldn't see any of this around Nashville. So this is all going to come out one day. But for now, it's going to remain while I work in the other areas. This was something I tried. It's just styrofoam block, and you can make yourself a stone wall using that. You can also push down, with a screwdriver or some kind of tool or marker, and get more relief on some of these things so they're not as flat. It was just something I just tried. A friend of mine, Terry Davis, had us do that for a class. It worked pretty good. This is a Bragdon mold. And this one here, I've used quite a bit, and it's getting quite old now. This right here was Bragdon. And what I did was I laid it in a cradle, the curved cradle. So I could do an inside curve and an outside curve as needed to make the wall. And then since they are 4 inches, I think, something like that, 4 or 5 inches, I used a saw to cut it down to where I wanted it after I cast it. And I was able to get 2 or 3 pieces of this curved wall out of that one piece. So you can see it goes on. The area you saw, first of all, was to the left, and it goes all the way down around to the right. And got a little short piece of the wall here. So it worked out well. I was happy with the Bragdon. And there's more wall I had here. I kind of overdid it here, but it was handy for what I needed. I think it'll work out pretty good. This will be a river. There's a dam here, and these are mills. Just my luck, I had a faucet up above in the ceiling. The casting, it's a brass casting, and it actually split. So I came down here, and it was all wet, and it got into the board here that I had all set, and the paint, the glue here, so kind of messed things up. Another long wall. So you see that Bragdon's worked out pretty well for me. Okay, this is another Bragdon abutment mold, 134, and I used that for a single track bridge and a double track bridge. And then I took 4 of those molds and used just a portion of it to create these. Okay, ground goop. Most of you probably know what ground goop is or heard of it. These are the tools I use when I make it. And I would probably still use it, but I'm going to use a lot more of the fabric quilting batting that I found. That worked really well, so I was quite happy with that, but I can see a need for both of them. I use Zonalite. I got a big bag for about $20, and I was told, be careful, you know, chemicals or, you know, cancer and all that. And I couldn't find anything from any company. They don't make this now, I understand. Grace doesn't. Grace might even be sold now. But I couldn't find anything anywhere that said that there was anything special that you had to be worried about with this. So Zonalite, and there's one other, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's a little larger. This is a very fine. And that's what it looks like there. So you see how fine it is. Use that, use cellular clay. Get that at Michael's, Hobby Lobby and that. And the paint, this was just some of the paint I had, and I wanted for this color right here. So I bought a gallon of the paint, and then I mixed it all up. And I've got something here telling you exactly what you mix. Cellular clay, paper mache, oh, vermiculite, that's it, or Zonalite. Acrylic paint, or just, you know, a gallon of cheap latex paint, and white glue. And it tells you, you know, it shows you what to mix quantities of. I've also found that it helps if you need to put a little water in it, and that makes it a little easier to spread. And this is what it looks like here, just as a base. And then you'd put your greenery and everything else over it. Okay, the only thing on trees is my wife started planting hydrangea bushes for me. And I've got bags of these things now, and they make nice trees, but you also have to do a little work. This is what they look like when you pull them off in the fall before the rain and snow hits them. So I still need a little cleaning there. And that's some I just set up on a foam board and just left them up there. But you can see the shapes are nice. You could take them, you could spray them, you could spray a glue and drop more material on them of the stuff we use for foliage. It's something to consider, and there's quite a few of these bushes around if you look for them. There's different types too. There's one that's very large, and it would make really nice, massive trees. Maybe more on size of O scale or S scale trees, but it's something to consider. So equipment paint schemes. I've been working with over time trying to come up with good paint schemes for my equipment. And a friend of mine painted these for me. I had the scheme I wanted, and basically it was, since Nashville Road is partly owned by the Milwaukee Road, I decided to go with a paint scheme basically off the Milwaukee Road, but change it to yellow, and then I add some striping at the end with its own logo. This is the scheme I would like to use on the F units, the first generation. I'm going to also have a 1969 era railroad, so it'll probably be a dip with more just a single paint scheme and name and logo. But you know, everything right now is 1956. Cabooses, these are the two cabooses, the two styles of cabooses that I'm using for 1956 with Scribed. And again, the same friend of mine painted these for me. And these are the, you can see the name is in full on this one and just the logo. Then a boxcar, I came up with this for the boxcars, main line to the south, since it runs from Chicago and Detroit down to Indianapolis, then all the way down to New Orleans. So it seemed to me like a good statement. main line to the south. I didn't like that on an angle though, because if you look at the box on the other side, that's also an angle, looks like it's dipping at both ends. So I changed it to just make it horizontal. I think I like this better. And then I'm doing a fleet of bulkhead flats for pulpwood operation. And this is the only pulpwood car or the only pulpwood load that I've created. I've been too busy doing other stuff, but I was happy the way this came out. Just sticks I found from around the place here. Okay, the last thing, let's see. If you don't like it, don't be afraid to change it. We'll go back to that first picture. This originally, as I say, was a mainline passing siding, and I happened to have this operation right here, just the 2 tracks, one to push cars in and one to bring the outbound loads out. And apart from that, there was nothing else here. So after I rebuilt this area, like I showed you, then I was able to take the main line and run it to the back. And you see how much room I had to add the yard. You know, go back one time and see the difference. That main line right there and the passing siding were both on cork. And that is this track right here. And let's see, this track right here, these 2 tracks, passing siding and main line. And everything else was built around those 2. So the main line here at one time, it came straight and went right into that track that's raised right there. So I didn't really have to rip anything up. I just had to add a lot. Didn't even take the tracks out and remove the cork, just left it. And then the other way, at one time, this one main line coming up here, and this is where we had the passing siding. So you can see how much I was able to add here, a whole another operation, and then I have industries down there. So that's it. Nothing else to show you right now, but I am working on, I will be working through the summer on operations on the Nashville Road and get into how we operate, the car card system that we came up with, and a lot of other stuff that might interest people in operations. So that's it, Jim.
Well, Andy, I can't thank you enough for doing this. It's just fascinating, the stuff that you've been able to accumulate and to accomplish on your model railroad. It's really a beautiful job.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
And I look forward